What's up, everyone? Good morning. Welcome to Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors, along with Sean Hammond. It is Friday morning, January 26th. We got a little bit of breaking news right before we jumped on this morning, Sean. The Bears making a hire for their QB coach, taking assistant QB coach Kerry Joseph from the Seattle Seahawks. Not a surprising hire when you look at where he came from, serving under Shane Waldron the last several years in Seattle.
Yeah, maybe not a huge surprise that Shane is, going to try to bring some of his guys over. I mean, that's the day they hired him earlier this week. That was one of the first things I did, is kind of flip through the Seahawks offensive coaches, see who might be available. Kerry Joseph is a guy who spent the last 2 years working with Geno Smith, assistant quarterback coach. Has a lot of experience as a quarterback himself, as a player. Played overseas in Europe and in Canada. A little bit briefly played in the NFL, played some safety in the NFL, interestingly.
Yeah, that was an interesting career arc for plays at McNeese State. Ends up in the NFL playing safety for a little bit, then goes over to the Canadian Football League, wins a Grey Cup at quarterback in 2027, I think it was, or
2007. Yeah, and was basically the MVP of the league as a quarterback in 2007. So, yeah, interesting career for him. He's going to come in and he's going to be the right-hand man as far as the quarterback position goes for Shane Waldron. Obviously, Waldron is going to play a big part in what this is going to look like, what this passing attack will look like, what this rushing attack will look like. But the quarterback coach is an important position. That's the guy who's in your quarterback's ear every single day. Whether that's Justin Fields, whether that's Caleb Williams or somebody else, he's going to have a big part in what the quarterback position looks like moving forward.
Absolutely. Got a lot to talk about this morning. I'm smiling over here, Sean, because Robert Phillips checking in from over there across the pond in the UK says they have a good center. I chuckled because the British spelling of center, and then followed up with a center with a smiley face there.
Nice.
But it's the other thing was I was listening to the score the other day. I think it was Wednesday, and Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus was on there, and he actually was talking about Seattle's center. I can't remember the gentleman's name, is a free agent and someone that the Bears will most likely be interested in. So Robert, they do have a decent center, and he is a free agent, and that is someone who the Bears probably will have interest in. We're actually going to dive into Brad's list of free agents a little later in the show today, because I found some really interesting things in there, particularly along the lines, which the Bears are going to spend a lot of time on this offseason. But yeah, we got to start today's show, Sean. We haven't talked since the hire happened of Shane Waldron coming over. What is your initial reaction to the hire?
I think that it really makes a lot of sense if you look at Matt Eberflus and kind of what he wants in his offense, what he wants his team to look like. It's a coach. Shane Waldron is a coach who comes from the Sean McVay tree. So you still have that, the wide zone blocking scheme. That's the reason you kept Chris Morgan, your offensive line coach. So from that perspective, it makes a ton of sense. And, he has experience doing it as a coordinator, which is something Luke Getsy did not have. And you kind of figured it would have surprised me if they went with another first-time coordinator a little bit. It wouldn't have been a huge surprise maybe, but I think they wanted somebody with experience in that job. And, Waldron's offenses have been efficient running the football. They've been near the top of the league in yards per carry. And I still think they're going to lean on that run game. I think philosophically this offense is going to be similar to what we saw last year. I think the hope is that they can just execute better.
You've heard Kevin Warren, since he came over, talk about continuity and stability being major goals for any organization. And that's, a major goal or a major reason organizations thrive are those concepts. So when the Bears decided to keep Matt Eberflus, partially because of continuity and stability, I always assumed like we were going to be looking at an offensive coordinator that was a similar background that Luke Getsy came from, that was running that same type of offense. You don't really want to have to start over here. So, yeah, and I completely agree. Like when you take that into consideration, you had to assume they were going to start looking at someone who had some experience, given their most recent history with Luke Getsy. It just, I won't say Shane Waldron is the most exciting hire in the world. Like the Seattle offense is like he deserves a lot of credit for Geno Smith career revival, even in 2020 or going back to the last year with Russell Wilson. Now, like you could kind of see the wheels starting to fall off a little bit with Russ going back to that last year in Seattle. He deserves some credit there. There are some times where the Seattle offense, vanilla is not the right way to put it. There are some games where I guess like a bit stagnant. Like there are times where I feel he's been very creative and times where it's like Ken Walker's running in the back of his offensive line for 2.5 yards a carry. And, they're grinding out this 17-13 game that they end up losing because they didn't have enough offense until the end. That's a bit concerning, but overall, like it checks the boxes that we know that the Bears were looking to check.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think, Matt Eberflus is still going to be the type of coach similar in some ways to Pete Carroll in that he wants to lean on his defense and, you just need enough offense to get the job done. And I mean, to me, that's kind of what this hire screams. Like, yeah, they're going to be smart with the football and they're going to try to be efficient and not put your defense in bad positions. I think you look at obviously, the rushing attack has been pretty good over the 3 years that Waldron was the coordinator in Seattle. The passing attack did some really nice things in 2022. I think they were 11th in passing with Geno Smith at quarterback. There was a bit of a dip this past season, but it's not like he has never had an explosive passing attack. I think if you're in the top half of the league, that's pretty good. It was a one year blip. Is that something that they can replicate? You hope so. That's obviously why they're bringing him here. He's got to be able to fix the passing attack. Like if the Bears were a top 5 running team each of the last 2 seasons, that's not the problem. If they can't get the passing attack going, there's going to be bigger issues. And obviously that's a whole big whole challenge in and of itself.
Yeah. And that doesn't really matter who ends up at quarterback. Is there anything, thinking of that, is there anything you're gleaning from the hire in terms of Justin Fields or moving on from Justin Fields?
I think this is a perfectly neutral hire that really doesn't sway it one way or the other. You can look at Shane Waldron and say, okay, he revived Geno Smith's career. Great. Have him work with Justin Fields, see what they can do together. Maybe he can take him to the next level. At the same time, I know a lot of people are pointing out that he's worked with QB Collective, which is, this private training group. A lot of NFL coaches are listed on their website. I don't know exactly how extensively he's worked with them, but Caleb Williams has also worked with that same group. So yeah, you can connect the dots. Certainly if he wants a good recommendation on Caleb Williams, he knows who to call. There's a whole coaching tree there. And so I think this doesn't really sway it one way or the other. I honestly think this guy can probably coach either quarterback, whoever you give him. I think that he will try to, he's going to get the best out of.
I think the thing I'd love to know how they approach this with these coordinator candidates, right? Like how forthcoming were they with information of their plan, of what they plan to do at quarterback? No idea. That Cliff Kingsbury interview had to be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was probably the Bears picking his brain more than the other way around. We talked about it last time. Like that just never seemed like a realistic option. There's no way Matt Eberflus would use that type of offense. It just doesn't fit his MO. It doesn't fit his philosophies. And in the exact same way, the hiring Shane Waldron does, it checks all those boxes.
Make sure you follow Sean on X or Twitter at Sean_Hammond. You can also follow him on Instagram. Is it Bears_reporter?
It sure is.
That's why I always want to make sure I always forget if the underscore is in there on Instagram as well or not. So you can also find myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. You can follow all of our content at Bears_Insider on Twitter. Of course, go to shawlocal.com. You'll find all of our content there, including our latest column from our columnist Mark Silverman, who likes the Shane Waldron hire. Now, of course, Sean, it goes towards, we got the QB, we got the offensive coordinator in place. We got the QB coach in place. They still have to figure out that offensive staff, but the rest of the offensive staff. But really, starting to wonder, where we stand at the defensive coordinator position, because it's been a lot quieter on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it has. And, the more I think about this, the more I feel like it makes sense that you would probably promote somebody from within. I mean, Matt Eberflus didn't commit either way to calling plays or not calling plays next season. I don't know. Just based off the vibe I am getting from that, it kind of feels like why, they had a good thing going the second half of the year. Why would they switch that up? I mean, obviously Matt Eberflus can call a really nice game for your defense. He did that in Indy. He did that, at the end of this season. And so if you're hiring a defensive coordinator who's not going to call plays, I feel like that's going to be a tough job to fill from outside your organization. That's just kind of my sense of it. I kind of feel like it's going to be a promotion and then hire another position coach. I don't know. What are you feeling about? What are you feeling about this, Kyle? Like you said, we haven't heard much at all.
Well, did you see the report from Diana Rossini this morning?
No, I haven't. What was that?
Joe Barry is interviewing with the Bears today.
Okay, well,
that's an
interesting one.
That little pause from you there, as that was kind of how I reacted. I'm like, to me, so my guess there with the Joe Barry thing is they're just picking his brain, bring him the division rival, the coach from the division rival that just got fired. Let him air his grievances a little bit, see what you can get out of him. I can't imagine they're hiring Joe Barry, right?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, I guess, like I said, I don't know what up and coming defensive coach you're going to get for a position like that. In a sense, maybe a guy like that who, has taken some lumps and needs a landing place could be available.
I mean, he probably would do it without needing to call plays, but
yeah, absolutely.
So like if you're talking about, if we are talking about a defensive coordinator where Matt Eberflus has decided that he's going to call plays, that is probably what you're looking at, a Joe Barry type. If you
make an outside hire,
then it's going to have to be someone like Joe Barry, because anyone else is going to want to call plays.
And look, at the end of the day, it's still Matt Eberflus running that defense. Like,
I'm not trolling anyone, Rick. It's Diana Rossini. I'll double make sure we got it. I can't even look for a blue check mark anymore because of it, but I'm pretty certain I saw that, and he was interviewing with Philly first today. Yeah, Courtney Cronin retweeted it. Former Packers defensive coordinator Joe Barry will interview for jobs on the defensive staff for both the Philadelphia Eagles and Chicago Bears, per sources. Philly up first. She tweeted. Diana tweeted that this morning, 8:35 a.m. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the first news we've really heard about the defensive coordinator position at all. I mean, they've been, and rightfully so, you're focused on getting that offensive coordinator and, now trying to fill out that staff on the offensive side. But yeah, that's an important position too. At the end of the day, Matt Eberflus is going to be running this thing on the defensive side. I just feel like this is going to be his defense. Even if I know Joe Barry caught a lot of flack the last couple of years, but even if you bring that guy in, like, it's still Matt Eberflus's defense. I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Yeah, it's the perception is going to be, I guess, rightfully so. Like, it's the perception is not going to be met very well, or it's not going to be met well from Bears fans. But I think you make a good point. Like, if Matt Eberflus is retaining play calling duties, like, that's more of Joe Barry being like a veteran assistant coach you're kind of looking at there. And I can't say that, like, I don't know Joe Barry well enough to like know how he is in the building. Like, I wouldn't want him calling plays based on what we've seen in Green Bay, but like, I can't say like he's not worthy of being in the building or helping out. Like, maybe he's focused on your defensive line or your linebackers. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you could bring him in as like, one of those senior assistant roles or whatever too. If you don't hire him as DC, like it doesn't hurt to have as many voices in the room as possible. But yeah, like this is going to be Matt Eberflus's defense, no matter who they hire.
A sports Chicago style, or a good friend Triple R says Chris Harris interviewed or will interview for defensive coordinator job. Chris Harris, former Bears safety, one of my favorite people to interview back in the day, was with the Bears when I first started on the beat. And he's an incredibly smart guy. He came back with the Bears in like 2014, 2015. I remember interviewing him. I did a feature. He was like a what do they even call those? Like a quality control.
Quality control. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he started with the Bears. He's moved on. I think he was in Tennessee the last couple of years on Mike Vrabel's staff. I have a ton of respect for Chris Harris. He's a great football mind. I think that would be a great hire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like a guy who kind of came up with the Bears would be an awesome hire. And certainly, he was around for some pretty good defenses back in the day as a player, and certainly would be able to, I think, connect well with the players.
Rick says, just give Dave Borgonzi the title and let Flus call the defense. I think that's really the way they're going to go. Like, I think there's a better chance they bring someone in as a veteran assistant or something like that. Maybe they give someone the title. Like maybe it is, like we're saying, maybe it ends up being Joe Barry and it's just the title, but he's not calling the plays. But I think that scenario, or just promoting someone like Dave Borgonzi and Flus calling it, I think, Rick, those are the two most likely scenarios. Sean, you agree?
Yeah, and I agree. I think Borgonzi would kind of make sense in terms of a guy who's been under Flus for a bunch of years now, knows the system really well, has coached with Flus for a while. He's been a linebackers coach since 2018. So you got to, I mean, certainly if the Bears are open to interviewing people from within, I would imagine he's putting his name in the ring and trying to get that position. And I think that could make a lot of sense. As far as the guys who are on the staff right now and you would look to promote, I think he would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I want to head over and talk about some free agents and Brad Spielberger's list. But before we do, we're starting to see some of these coaching hires come together here. You got Jim Harbaugh hired in LA, Raheem Morris hired by the Atlanta Falcons. Thoughts on the coaching carousel so far?
Not surprised by Harbaugh. I want to text our buddy Hub and see what his thoughts are on that. I was thinking of that this morning.
I like Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert's a fun pairing.
It is a fun pairing. I think that pairing in terms of that organization and being in sunny California seemed to make a lot of sense. It seemed like that was important to the Harbaughs. And then Atlanta, I mean, look, I was surprised. I mean, I think a lot of us kind of thought the Bill Belichick thing was trending that way for Atlanta. I don't know what Bill's going to do because, there's only we got 2 spots left, right? Seattle and Washington.
Has Carolina hired?
Carolina made a hire yesterday. They hired the Buccaneers offensive coordinator, a young dude. His name's escaping me right now, but yeah, I'm pretty sure those are the only 2 open spots. And you look at it and it's like Dan Quinn to Seattle makes a lot of sense. I don't know what if we're going to be spending a year talking about Bill Belichick, what's he going to do next year? If that's what is going to drive the narrative of any coaching situation for the next 365 days.
I kind of assumed it was always going to be Atlanta for Bill Belichick. The fact that it's not I think he's not going to be a head coach this year now.
I think so too. And yeah, from all the vibes I get from Washington, it's like they seem to, they have new ownership. They're bringing in former Warriors team presidents and like guys from all over the sports world. And they seem to want to do things differently. I just don't know if Bill Belichick is what they're going to end up with as their head coach.
That's interesting. So like the Washington Commanders ownership group is the group that's the group led by Magic Johnson, right?
Yeah, he's part of that. Yes.
Yeah. So that they own a team in every major sports league in the U.S. now. I believe they own a couple teams in Canada as well. That ownership group, they've been pretty aggressive in terms of like making big splashes after acquiring teams. Bill Belichick certainly would be a big hire. I don't know if that's the type of road they're willing to go, or if they're looking more on like the player side. I'm really fascinated though, like for Bill Belichick to get 2 interviews in Atlanta, and for them to pass. And now I actually agree with their decision. I like Raheem Morris.
I want to make that clear too. Like this is not a knock on Raheem Morris. I was just surprised, where this ended up. But yeah, that dude is going to be a good coach.
Yeah, I think it's the right hire. I would pick Raheem Morris over Bill Belichick in 2024. It's just it's just surprising. You don't see that a lot. I expected them to go with quite possibly the greatest of all time, but it's great to see Raheem Morris get another chance at a head coaching job.
Yeah, it absolutely is. He had a couple of years in Tampa way back in the day, and then obviously filled in Atlanta when Dan Quinn was fired. But yeah, I'm excited to see him get another opportunity as well. It's kind of a interesting story to see him go back to Atlanta, where he was the interim head coach for like half a season or whatever. I think that's a great hire as well. I mean, I think that's a dude who, seems to really get it, and I think they got a lot of talent down there. I don't think that's like a huge rebuild in any sense.
I'm going to drop the link to Brad Spielberger's list of top 150 free agents, just so anyone who wants to click on that while we're kind of going through it here is able to see what we're talking about. Sean, I want to pivot over there now and look at this list from Brad. The first thing that really stood out to me was the depth of both defensive and offensive lines in this year's free agent class. The Bears, whether that's edge rusher, interior offensive line, interior defensive line, there's just guys that look like great fits across the board for the Bears here.
Yeah, and of course, there's the caveat that especially some of the top names, we still got to learn who's going to get the franchise tag. Obviously, teams can make deals with these guys. We see Jalen Johnson on this list as the top cornerback, and he's in the top 10 overall.
T. Higgins is another guy.
T. Higgins. Some of these guys will not hit free. Some of these guys will not hit free agency, but yeah, you're absolutely right, and obviously that's where Ryan Poles wants to build his team from the inside out. That's been the focus all along. I think edge rusher is super interesting. Do you want to be? Obviously, the Bears, they need to find another edge rusher opposite Montez Sweat. Sweat did great things this season, but you got to find another guy on the other side to make things a little easier for everyone. And, I think it's an interesting question. Are they going to want to be paying two really big contracts with Montez and potentially a free agent on the other side? Look, if there's one place you're going to spend money, that's one of the few where you're okay with spending a lot of money.
It's a really it's an interesting way they could go about it here, because like considering the huge amount of cap space that they have, the way they're set up really well financially right now, like they could if they wanted to go after a Josh Allen or Brian Burns and break the bank and just say, we're going to pair that guy up with Montez Sweat. That would be a great pairing, but like it's such a deep class, like at edge rusher, like just looking down at like I think it was like number 15 here. I don't want to scroll and try and talk. Like Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, right? Like that's probably not going to command quite a top premium tag, but like you pair Danielle Hunter with Montez Sweat, you're looking really good. And considering the young depth you have at the position, like I thought about that. Like another guy like on the interior defensive line, where was I looking at from Seattle? He was the New York Leonard Williams, right? Like you talk about really like Gervon Dexter, good rookie year, but bam, you throw someone like him or Williams or Chris Jones on the interior of that defensive line, and all of a sudden you're really, really strong. And that's when I was looking through this free agent list, I kind of felt like I had the realization with the Bears, or I knew it, but it was more just bringing it back up, is unlike the last couple of years of Ryan Poles, where you're just trying to fill major holes. It's
Mhm.
like now you're looking for upgrades to push quality pieces down the depth chart a little bit, right? And most
Yeah.
spots you're not in terrible position anymore. So they can approach this in so many different paths, and with such a good free agent class, it's gonna be fun.
It is. And Kyle, I just wrote my rookie review that we got up online right now, looking at how all the 2023 Bears rookies did, and we got grades for each of them. And I think it was a nice reminder too that like this was year 2 of a complete rebuild. You still have they had 8 rookies playing 8 draft picks, not even counting Tyson Bagent, play 12 or more games this season. That's a ton of experience for some of your young guys. And um, you're you got all those guys, and of course the draft class before the 2022 draft class, those guys have a ton of reps. And now you're at a point where you can start adding, you're going to start building. It's, you got your floor set, like you got your base. You're going to start adding. You can pick and choose the positions where you want to spend your money and really add some premium talent, and you feel like that's only going to be upgrades. You're not going to be filling holes. You're not going to be scrambling like it felt like they were the last couple of years with Ryan Pace. Yeah, you're not going to be panicking and signing a Robert Quinn to a contract that a couple of years down the line looks really bad.
You're not, and you're not shedding contracts and creating more holes just to try and make up for past mistakes.
Yeah. The Kyle Fuller, that was basically, they needed money, and they cut him. There's numerous examples of that from those last couple of years.
Let's see if I can find. Robert Phillips says, "Surely center guard, receiver, and edge are where we need strength most." No, I'm sorry. There was another. Robert had followed that up with, "Wonder if Nate Davis will start to earn his money next year." Wanted to get your thoughts on the interior of the Bears' offensive line. I think everyone knows that center is going to be a major priority for the Bears this offseason. I expect them to have an upgrade on the interior too. I think Nate Davis is on this roster next year. I don't think Nate Davis has a starting job, essentially.
Really? I don't agree with that. I think Nate Davis is going to be your starting right guard.
I don't.
Why would you be paying him all that money to not play?
Well, I guess I should say I think they're going to bring in another veteran interior offensive lineman. I guess I should say. I don't know.
I mean, that's fine. They unless they're keeping Lucas Patrick, they're going to have to.
Yeah, I think the thing here is maybe more so that I think it's more they need another veteran body at the guard position that they can count on. One, I didn't think Nate Davis. It's hard to. He missed time. It was kind of weird to begin this season. I don't think he played well enough to completely solidify like going into camp. Like if you could bring another veteran to challenge him, I think that's worth it. But 2, you also need another veteran guy that can play on either side, because Tevin Jenkins, as great as he is, you're always going to be concerned with injuries there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, Tevin hasn't played a full season. I think last year was a really weird year for Nate Davis. It was unusual. He was dealing with some family matters, and some close relatives were sick, and clearly that affected his offseason well into training camp.
Yeah.
Look, me personally, I'm going to give the guy a pass and say, I didn't think he was that bad during the season. Once obviously like week 1, week 2, or I don't think he played week 2, but early on there were some rough times because of all that time missed. I think you give this guy a full off season to like kind of get back to himself, and once he's there through all of training camp and all that stuff, knock on wood, he stays healthy. I think he's going to be fine. I 100% expect him to be in your starting lineup. That's why they brought him here. And last year was a weird year. I think the Tevin worries with the injuries is a fair concern. I do think look, yeah, you got to find somebody who can you're going to address the center position, and you're probably going to get a backup who can play multiple spots. I just, to me, I think Nate Davis is going to be. I think you're still going to go into the year with Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins as your starters. That's just me personally. That's my thoughts on the position. You're welcome to push back on that.
Now, how about Braxton Jones? Because I feel like seeing more and more as we get into the offseason here with people calling for an upgrade at left tackle.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because it really does come down to what Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus think of the job Braxton has done. You know, is he an ascending player? He's still young, of course, 2 years under his belt. Do they think he can still hold down that left tackle spot, or is that a spot that they see as a potential upgrade? You know, certainly there's a lot of tackles being named as potential first round picks, and you got 2 picks there, of course. But yeah, like it's a tough one. I think I don't expect that. Are you saying like could Braxton be bumped to guard, or would you think he'd be your backup tackle?
I think backup tackle.
I think if they do upgrade that, I'm with you. Like I think you know, maybe upgrade the left tackle spot, and you got Braxton as your swing guy who can play both sides, and that's probably it for Larry Borum. But yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to that evaluation. It wouldn't surprise me if they stick with Braxton. I wouldn't be shocked if they do that.
It depends. If they consider him to be still ascending, did he make progress? If they feel like he's plateaued, I think you have found an average to slightly above average starting left tackle through 2 years.
Which is great for a 5th round pick, by the way.
Right. So has he plateaued? Is that as good as he's going to get, or is he continuing to ascend? That's what they're probably figuring out right now. I don't have a strong feeling either way. If they felt like they needed an upgrade there, I completely see it. If they said he played well enough, we're going to invest on the defensive line. We don't want to pay big money. I mean, you look at the money being thrown around at left tackles in recent years in free agency. It's been a lot. So I personally would, I guess, have a hard time. I have a hard time seeing them pursuing a left tackle in free agency. I do think in the draft, tackle will certainly be. I don't think it's going to be a first round priority.
I don't think so either.
I think it's certainly a priority on day 2.
I don't think so either. I'd be surprised if they went tackle in the first round 2 years in a row, even if it's the other side. Like there's too many other areas where you want to upgrade. You know, we're talking about that defensive line. You know, talking about center, if you potentially look to trade back from 9 or something, like I'd be surprised if they went tackle again in the first round, but certainly it wouldn't surprise me if they take a tackle somewhere in this draft.
Yeah. All right. We're already past 30 minutes. We got to get out of here in a few minutes, guys. But Sean, we got plenty of time. We got 6 weeks until free agency, 7 weeks.
We sure do.
There. We got plenty of time to come back and keep talking free agents. Let's talk about the championship games just for a couple minutes here.
Who you got?
Yeah.
I got the 49ers beating the Lions, and I'm taking the Chiefs to go, on the road and win that game. I think that big game experience in Mahomes is going to pay off. Certainly, I think these are both going to be really good games. Obviously you wonder about Brock Purdy in a big moment. He's a lot of times they've been playing from ahead all season. So, this is going to be a big test for him.
He struggled last week against Green Bay, but he put together a drive when he needed to. I'm taking the favorites. I think the 49ers and the Ravens have been the best two teams all year long. I'm excited for that matchup. With that being said, I find myself increasingly rooting for Detroit. It's just a fun team. It's a fun story. Dan Campbell, he's found a way to unite that team. Unite that town behind him. It's certainly been a fun storyline. I tell you what, I'd like to see the celebration in Detroit if they win this game on Sunday. That's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, that would absolutely be a fun one. And you're right. Like this is Look, I know they're the Bears division rival, but this is the best story in football, and I would say in several years. Like, you got this underdog team that's never been to a Super Bowl, despite being around forever. And, they're playing really well right now. They're playing well at the right time. Just seeing that home crowd those last 2 weeks, seeing Eminem in the crowd and all the fun that they're having. It's hard not to root for this team right now because it's just a really good story.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty cool for Jared Goff, too. It'd be awesome if he could get Detroit to the Super Bowl after getting the Rams there and then losing. And, the Rams made the trade for Matt Stafford because they felt they needed an upgrade at QB to get over the top. And it did, and it worked. And it's really cool to see, despite that, Jared Goff still playing pretty well. And, he's playing better now than I feel that, the year that they made it to the Super Bowl, he played really well for the Rams, but he's playing as well as then at the top of his game. And frankly, when Detroit traded for Jared Goff or got him back in the deal, I did not think it was going to work out. And he's played well. He's executed what they've asked him to do. And it'd be a pretty awesome storyline to see him be able to bring a Super Bowl to Detroit.
Yeah, it is funny. We all talked about that as, that trade as Jared Goff kind of being the stopgap measure for 2 years or whatever. And here we are 3 years in, and he's having arguably the best season of his career. He's thrown for 4,000 yards back-to-back seasons. When he takes care of the football, they win games. And that's probably going to be the key in this one against a really good 49ers defense. Can they take care of the football and avoid those mistakes? And
it's going to be outdoors. At least it's not cold in San Francisco.
I haven't checked the forecast. Hopefully it's not. I hope it's not raining like it was last week.
Yeah, the last I had looked, it's not supposed to be raining in San Francisco. It is supposed to be raining in Baltimore. I haven't seen how heavy it's supposed to be raining, but
okay.
They are calling for some kind of precipitation out there.
We could see Roquan Smith in the Super Bowl, Kyle.
He's been awesome.
He's been so good for them. He really has.
Yeah, actually, we're getting completely sidetracked now, but it's our show. Why not? I was hanging out with Mike B last Saturday watching some football. The wives got together and we watched some football together, and they went and did their thing. And we were talking about Patrick Queen, and I completely forgot about that guy. He's actually a free agent too, Sean. He's like number 80 on the list from Brad Spielberger. And frankly, Patrick Queen's been a nice player. Mike and I were talking but he hasn't been if you remember, Patrick Queen coming into the league was I loved him. I thought he was going to be an absolute stud, but they have so many names on that defense and they're playing so well as a unit. It's they don't have any, I don't think they have anyone with more than 11 sacks. I think I read, but they are so good as a unit that they have 7 people with at least 6 essentially. It's a good team. It's a deep team. And it's one of the best defenses we've seen in the last decade.
And, I feel like we say it every year. It's you see a guy in the draft who's kind of slipping and somehow he ends up on the Ravens, with a second round pick or whatever. And It seems like they're always capitalizing on those opportunities and getting guys at a really good spot in the draft or at a really good cost. And they've done a really nice job with that defense. I mean, that's probably the best defense in football. And you know what, if they get to the Super Bowl, it's going to be because of those guys. And I know Lamar Jackson's great. They're doing good things on that side too. But look, if you got to beat the Super Bowl champs, you got to beat Patrick Mahomes. They have the defense to potentially do that.
Definitely. Yeah, it's going to be a good weekend of football. So we're going to go ahead, get out of here, guys. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Sean_Hammond, at Kyle Nabors, at Bears_Insider, and go to shawlocal.com all weekend long and into next week. Thank you, everyone who joined us live this morning. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave a thumbs up and a comment. We appreciate everyone that does. Everyone have a good week, and we'll talk to you guys next week.